Hello everyone. So I didn't quite get through Handout 1C in class, so I thought I'd make this recording, especially for Thursday's class, to kind of show you this handout and give you an example of a positive feedback system. Now remember, positive feedback systems are usually always bad. They're going to lead us away from homeostasis. Normally, that's not a good thing. We want to stay at that set point and maintain some type of balance. There are a few exceptions to bad positive feedbacks, and I'm going to cover two of them in this handout. So let's get rid of me, and we'll look at this handout a little more closer. Now, Handout 1C is going to look exactly like Handout 1B did at the beginning. So remember, we've got our brain here, and this part of the brain called the hypothalamus is zoomed in so we can see the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus, remember from our last handout, is the center of homeostasis. It is the control center. Now, it does a lot more than just release antidiuretic hormone that we mentioned in Handout 1B. Another example of this is the hypothalamus contains a structure called the parturition milk reflex center. The parturition milk reflex center is going to be responsible for two things: parturition, which is just a fancy word for saying childbirth, and milk production. We have a reflex that causes milk production. Now, both childbirth and milk secretion is a positive feedback system. Turns out that they are good positive feedback systems. So what we're going to do in this handout is we're going to go through both of these and give you an example of a positive feedback system. Now, let's do childbirth first. So the hypothalamus is going to receive a signal from our body that it's time to have our baby. And when that happens, just like with dehydration, the hypothalamus is going to send a signal to this pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is going to release a hormone for childbirth called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the primary hormone that causes childbirth. Now, what oxytocin is going to do is it's going to be secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. It's going to be dumped into our bloodstream, and it's going to flow down the flow through your bloodstream to mom's uterus. And the uterus is where the baby is. Now, what oxytocin does is it is going to stimulate that uterus to contract. So when the uterus contracts, baby's head moves and pushes into mom's cervix, which is the bottom of the uterus. All right? I'm going to kind of move this out a little bit. Don't worry about what's in blue just yet. We're going to focus on what is in red. So we don't really care what's in blue at the moment. We'll get to what's in blue in just a second. So oxytocin is a hormone that's going to tell the uterus to contract. When the uterus contracts, it stimulates the baby's head to be pushed into the cervix. So now we've got baby's head pushing into the cervix. Now, as that happens, the cervix is going to send a nervous signal back to the brain. So oxytocin stimulates the uterus. The uterus contracts, pushes baby's head against the cervix. The cervix then sends a signal back to the brain And what it does is it tells the brain to secrete more oxytocin. So then more oxytocin is secreted. It flows through the bloodstream, tells the uterus to contract. The uterus contracts, pushes baby's head against the cervix. Cervix then tells the brain to release more oxytocin. And so this is why the childbirth process starts off slow with little contractions and then just keeps getting worse and worse. What is happening is we've got more and more oxytocin being released, which is causing more contractions of the uterus, which then pushes the baby's head into the cervix even more, and then even more signals are sent back up to the brain, releasing more oxytocin. So this is a positive feedback system. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Now, what's cool about childbirth is that homeostasis is the baby staying in the womb, not doing anything. Well, we don't want that, right? We want the baby to be born. So we're going to cause a positive feedback system. Oxytocin is going to be released. That oxytocin is going to stimulate contractions in the uterus, which then pushes that baby's head into the cervix. The cervix keeps sending signals to the brain, stimulating more and more and more oxytocin release. So during the childbirth process, what happens is that the contractions get stronger and more forceful as more oxytocin is being released. This is going to continue to accelerate and push us away from homeostasis, away from the set point, until the baby is born. Now, once the baby's born, our oxytocin levels slow down and the contractions stop or slow down. There's no more baby head to push against the cervix, so we start to turn all of this positive feedback system off. And mom will start to return back to normal where she's not having any contractions. Now, another thing that happens with oxytocin is that as we are making oxytocin, look at the green section here. As we release oxytocin, oxytocin does more than just stimulate the uterus. It also stimulates the mammary glands to eject fluid. Now, this fluid is called colostrum. I actually have a typo here. It's C-O-L-O. Now, colostrum is a fluid that's really low in nutrients, but it's high in antibodies and immune qualities. So if mom decides to breastfeed her newborn baby, the oxytocin is going to stimulate this ejection of fluid. The first fluid that comes out is this colostrum. For about 1 to 3 days, mom is only producing colostrum. Now, what's going to happen is baby is going to be breastfeeding, and this breastfeeding is going to invoke a second positive reflex. Now, the baby is going to actually lose weight for the first couple of days. The baby is just getting this colostrum. The colostrum, like I said, is low in nutrients, but it's high in antibodies. So baby's immune system is getting a boost by eating this colostrum. Now, as the baby suckles and eats the colostrum, this suckling invokes a second positive reflex. All right, I'm going to zoom in on it here. And what is going on is baby's suckling is going to send a signal to mom's hypothalamus. And mom's hypothalamus is going to make a hormone called prolactin releasing hormone. This hormone is made in that hypothalamus. All right, so you can see I have an arrow here. So the prolactin is made by the hypothalamus. Prolactin releasing hormone is going to move into the pituitary gland, and what it does is it stimulates the pituitary gland to make another hormone called prolactin. Prolactin flows through the bloodstream from the brain to the mammary glands, and it tells the mammary glands to produce milk. So we've got kind of a combination of hormones here. We've got oxytocin telling the breast tissue to eject fluid, just produce fluid and eject it. We've got the baby suckling, stimulating mom's brain to make prolactin releasing hormone. Prolactin releasing hormone tells our pituitary gland to make prolactin, and it's actually the prolactin, when it flows through the bloodstream and gets to the breast tissue, that's what stimulates milk production. All right, so this is another positive feedback system, because the more the baby suckles and breastfeeds, the more signals go to the brain and the more prolactin releasing hormone mom makes. The more prolactin releasing hormone mom makes, the more prolactin is secreted, and prolactin causes more milk production. So the more breastfeeding you have, the more milk you produce. And this is also why when a mom decides she doesn't want to breastfeed anymore, she just stops the breastfeeding. That turns off the signal to her brain to make prolactin releasing hormone. And then without prolactin releasing hormone, we don't have prolactin. With no prolactin, the mammary glands stop making milk. And so mom will stop milk production when she stops her breastfeeding. So these two are an example of a positive feedback system. Now, these are both good positive feedback systems. Don't forget that most positive feedback systems are a bad thing, and they actually can end up causing disease, disorder, or death. Childbirth and milk production are two good positive feedback systems. All right, so I hope that kind of summarizes this handout. Don't forget to keep looking through and completing handout 1D, and then just peruse handouts 1E and F to round out this chapter. I'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend.